Welcome to Drinks and a Movie, the podcast pairing great films with great booze. Fair warning, spoilers up ahead. Now here's your host, Rudy Ruiz.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Drinks and a Movie podcast 007 series. Today we are going to be talking about the 15th film from Eon Productions. This is The Living Daylights, 1987, the first film with Timothy Dalton now taking over the role of Bond. But first, let's get into our drink for this episode. So we're going to do a little bit of Maker's Mark. This is a limited edition that my friend picked up for me at a Costco, and I haven't seen many people talk about it, and I haven't seen them since. But this is the Lost Recipes series, edition 1, released in 2024, coming in at 111.9 proof. Go pop that open. So I have had this before when we first got it, and we compared it with the Heart release and the Cellar Age and all that. And I remember thinking it was pretty decent, a little bit on the hot side though. So let's go. I don't really know too much about this. Like, I know they had the wood finishing series with that Heart release that I think I talked about recently. I don't even remember anymore. But my understanding is that with this one, well, let's see what it says on the side here. So the first release in the Lost Recipes series features the return of the roasted French mocha stave for layers of dark chocolate and buttery pastry and notes of baked apple. So that sounds good already. Let's see. So it also says here that recipe combinations that have never been tasted before, each crafted with a retired stave handpicked from our private selection archives. So the stave profile for this one is 1 baked American Pure 2, 3 seared French Cuvée, 0 Maker's Mark 46, 6 roasted French mocha, and 0 toasted French spice. So if you know about Maker's Mark, when they do their private selections or some of their wood finishing series, is they have these different, I think 10 different staves that you can add to the barrel that they throw in there that give it different flavor profiles. So those are the staves that they added, the ones I just named. So it all adds up to 10. And I guess the Lost Recipe is just stuff that, like it says, retired. Like the archive stave is the mocha. So I guess it's stuff we're not going to quite see again. And apparently it's possible with their to make like over 1,000 different possible combinations. So that's pretty interesting. But ooh, very vibrating. Put that on the floor here. All right, just swirling it up a little bit. Definitely mocha, definitely chocolatey on the nose. Quintessential bourbon for sure. Definitely get the wheat characteristic in there. Even on the nose, it comes across kind of hot. Maybe a little bit of like a pie crust, like a warm pie crust kind of scent. But yeah, definitely that roasty kind of mocha vibe coming off the nose. So let's go in for the taste. Cheers. Here we go. Second sip. Yeah, that's good. That's definitely got some heat on it, man. That's got some heat on it for what is 111 point for 111.9 proof. I'd say the palate matches the nose. You get that roastiness, which is really nice. You get that chocolatey vibe. You get the wheat, you know, your stock kind of caramel notes. It's got some spice and some heat on it. The finish, I'd say, is about a medium, and it is a little thin on the palate. Like it packs a lot of flavor. It really kicks you when you get it on the tongue in a good way with flavor, but is not very viscous. It still has like a thin quality to it, but it's good. I look forward to eventually blinding this against the Heart release and the Cellar Age. That's something I've been meaning to do for a while, just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, I don't know if these are so easy to find these days, and I haven't even seen if they released like the second one yet, because I think it says edition 1. Yeah, edition 1. So I'm guessing in 2025, maybe we'll get another. I'm not too sure. But anyway, let's get into this movie, everybody. The Living Daylights from 1987.
The name that means excitement is back. Bond. James Bond.
That girl must be very talented.
Shoot up.
Believe me, my interest in her is purely professional.
What is this?
I've had a few optional extras installed.
Wherever he goes, adventure follows.
Two of our men are dead. Koskov's named you.
Then I must die. Eliminate him.
Kill him! He lives for danger. He lives for the moment. He lives on the edge.
Whoever she was, I must have scared the living daylights out of her.
James Bond, 007, The Living Daylights.
So now starring Timothy Dalton as Bond, and we've talked about him a little bit before in the past when I think going into Diamonds Are Forever, or maybe even on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I don't remember, but pretty early on in that early 70s, late 60s era, they were already talking about the possibility of casting him, but at the time he was, I think, in his early 20s, so he was a little too young, you know. Bond should be in that like mid 30s range, and I think he himself was like, yeah, too young for it. And funny enough, I mean, we talked about how I think Connery was 32 or something when he started, or 35, and I think Roger Moore was already early 40s when he started. So by the time we get to A View to a Kill, like we mentioned before, he's pretty old, like, you know, and so is Lois Maxwell and some of the other characters. So obviously it was time for him to go, and he had already gone well past his original deal of, I think he was only signed to do 3 or 4 movies initially, but for different reasons, he kept coming back. And even he would later admit that he was definitely too old to be playing the part by the time we got to the A View to a Kill. And so now we've got Timothy Dalton in, and I've got to say right out the gate, well, apparently besides that too, is Pierce Brosnan was actually kind of next in line to get the part. So even though they had talked to Timothy Dalton in the past several times, I guess they had landed on Pierce, and he was about to be able to do it. But then a show he was on, Remington Steele, I guess got picked up for another season or more episodes or something. So he couldn't do it. And my understanding is that Albert Broccoli was unwilling to bend for that. He's like, if he's going to be Bond, he's got to be fully committed. I'm not like Remington Steele is not going to be Bond, and Bond's not going to be Remington Steele, is the quote that I heard. So that didn't work out. And I guess soon after that show got like canceled or something. So kind of a tough break for Pierce Brosnan. I guess it kind of put him in a weird position for several years, you know, as like an actor trying to get work and whatnot. And I mean, luckily for him, it would work out quite a while later. So his time is just not up yet, you know. But so we get Timothy Dalton, who I guess comes from a very like Shakespearean background. And right out the gate, I have to say his performance of Bond is quite different. You know what? Let me actually start with this first. Let me actually switch the topic to this first. So he's in, you know, he's finally in. I want to talk about, as usual, kind of the opening scene, which I think is kind of interesting, where they're doing this, you know, MI6 is doing this training mission, and we have 3 agents that we don't see their faces, and they kind of jump out of plane, and they're going to do this mission. One guy loses immediately. Another one gets killed by some bad guy who's actually trying to murder these dudes. And then we meet the new Bond, Timothy Dalton, and he kind of, you know, gets on the car of the bad guy, and they have this little car thing down a hill, and eventually kills the bad guy and gets out on a parachute and lands on a boat. And it's all fun, and not my favorite opening. I don't think we ever find out like why the guy was there killing them during the training exercise, and no one seems to be worried the fact that like one of their agents just got murdered. But, you know, whatever. It is what it is. And then we get this opening song by Aha, which I never knew that Aha, you know, from Take Me On, did a Bond song. So that was interesting. It's got, you know, another 80s vibe, kind of like the Duran Duran in the previous movie. And it was fine. I remember like thinking it was fine enough as I'm watching the opening credits, which are the usual cool graphics, but I don't know. It's forgettable. I already kind of forgot what it sounds like and how it goes. So I imagine it's going to rank pretty low in my list of favorite Bond opening songs. But yeah, I'll give you the plot really quick. Let's see. So this is off IMDb. So James Bond is sent to investigate a KGB policy to kill all enemy spies and uncovers an arms deal that potentially has major global ramifications. Let me read another one, actually. So James Bond 007's mission is to firstly organize the defection of a top Soviet general. When the general is recaptured, Bond heads off to find why an ally of General Koskov was sent to murder him. Bond's mission continues to take him to Afghanistan, where he must confront an arms dealer known as Brad Whitaker. Everything eventually reveals itself to Bond. Not the best synopsis there, but yeah, that's essentially it. I mean, the villains are kind of weak in this movie. I guess you could say there's 2 plus the henchman, who I don't remember his name, but he was in Die Hard. He's the guy with the glasses that gets the ho-ho, I have a machine gun sweater on. So he's kind of the henchman that's actually going to get in some good fight scenes, which I do like. And, you know, he's another like assassin type guy. And then we have General Koshkov, who is kind of whatever. I mean, and I do like how the beginning is about Bond trying to save this guy so he can defect and do this and that. But later on, we find out it was all just part of like his plan to, do this opium deal and this arms deal bullshit. And there's a lot of double crossing, which is interesting. John Rhys Davies is in this movie for a little bit, which is cool. I never knew he was in a Bond movie. If you don't know who I'm talking about, he was Sala in the Indiana Jones films. And he was also in the Lord of the Rings films as well. That's Show Sliders. So yeah, he's cool. Our Bond girl in this one is Kara, played by Miriam Daobo. Yeah, I'm not too sure, but she's kind of, she's just fine. I don't know. She's just kind of there. She doesn't add too much for me. Of course, she ends up falling in love with Bond and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, she just doesn't really do it for me. Just kind of stock, nothing special there. The other villain I forgot to mention was Brad Whitaker, played by Joe Don Baker, who is the arms dealer. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm like waiting, like, all right, so who's the villain going to be? Is it the Koshkov guy? Because that's kind of weak. And oh, is it this Whitaker guy? Because that's also kind of weak. And you go on and you realize like, oh, okay, I guess it's both of them, but they're just not memorable. They're not that interesting. I mean, Stromberg might even be better than them. Kamal Khan might be better than them. I don't know. They're definitely in the low tier of villains. And funny because there's literally two of them and they don't even make up for one, Max Zorin or Blofeld or, Yaphet Kotto or anything like that. So yeah, that's a little bit whack, and it doesn't serve the movie well. Now, the big thing to talk about here, and I will say, like, all in all, I think it's a good Bond movie. I think it's a solid entry. It's hindered by like kind of a weak Bond girl, kind of weak villains, but the action is good. We're in the late 80s now. The music's still done by John Barry, which is cool, and you can tell he's kind of updated to a little bit of an 80s like percussion and synth tracks and all that. But still the classic John Barry. And my understanding is that I think this is the last movie that he did in the Bond series, which is going to be interesting when I watch the next one, because I feel like, I don't know, I don't see it being the same without him. But luckily he stuck around for this one so that the changes weren't too drastic. We already got a new M a couple movies down the line. Now we have a new Moneypenny. So Lois Maxwell is out. Right. She's been there since day one, and it's sad to see her go. But I mean, like Roger Moore, she was up there in age. I mean, in that last movie, she was pretty old, and so it was time for her to, be done. And they have a new Moneypenny in who's, of course, like younger and whatnot. And I don't remember her name. Let me try and find it right now. Played by Carolyn Bliss. I'm not really familiar with her in other movies, but it's already weird. It's like, we have the new Bond and now we have the new Moneypenny, and they still don't. There's a little bit of that flirtation there, but I feel like Timothy Dalton's Bond is a lot more reserved and not about that. And it doesn't have the same kind of fun that we had in the Connery Bond, which we also lost once we got into Roger Moore too. And I'll be honest, I mean, say what you will, but I kind of miss the days of, Bond going into the office and throwing his hat on the rack and then, flirting with Moneypenny and then going into M's office. It's like that magic has just been gone for a while, and it definitely doesn't return here. Now, obviously, the big kind of factor with this movie is we have a new Bond, the fourth person to portray him in the Eon series. So how does he do? I've got to say, for me, I don't know. There's some aspects that I think are good. Like, I'm not going to hate on Timothy Dalton and his portrayal, but it is quite different. It just, again, it's lost a lot of the humor and the magic. I feel like he maybe plays it a little too seriously. And we've accepted throughout the movies that silly things are going to happen. It's going to get a little bit ridiculous. And even when they do the films that are a little more grounded, especially in the Roger Moore era, like he still brought a certain amount of charm and like a smile and a little joke to it. He just had a whole different vibe. And Dalton just takes it dead serious the whole time, it feels like. So it's a little bit of a weird vibe in that way. And yeah, I mean, I just find myself watching the movie and watching scenes and seeing him do stuff like on the mission. And I'm like, yeah, like Roger Moore wouldn't have done it that way. Like Sean Connery wouldn't have done it that way. Even the way he interacts with the women and whatnot. And it's not like he's super interested in betting everyone he meets in this one too. And I guess a lot of that had to do with the AIDS epidemic at the time. I guess it was time to, kind of make that change. And that's all fine and good. Like, that obviously doesn't bother me. But yeah, it's just weird to see him take it a little too seriously. I mean, and I guess coming from that Shakespearean, very big like theater background, I guess that's what you're going to get. But yeah, it's lost a little bit of the magic. I have to say, this is another one. I mean, like all of these movies, that deserves to be revisited. And when we get into the Pierce Brosnan section, I wonder if that humor is going to come back or if they're going to keep it serious. I know I've seen those movies a long time ago, but I don't remember them well. And I definitely don't know them, obviously, in the context of the whole series. So, that changes my perspective. This almost seems like kind of the Daniel Craig era stuff where that was more serious and he had a little more angst, which I think I said in an earlier episode that now that I've seen all the earlier films, I don't know that I'm going to like that as much when we eventually get to that point, but we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. But yeah, it kind of feels like they were trying to do that, like take that angle here in this movie back in 1987, and it probably just didn't, work too well. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say on this one. Again, there's good action. He's got the Aston Martin again, like a new Aston Martin. We get more of the gadgets and stuff. It feels like we haven't seen that in a second, or maybe I'm just misremembering. But yeah, all in all, I mean, it's not a bad movie. If anyone's out there saying, oh, the Timothy Dalton movies are trash, I mean, he's only done 2. This is one of them. And so far, it's good. I think it's a solid entry, good action, good music, just forgettable villains, forgettable Bond girl, and a different approach from, the actor playing Bond. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, leave a comment. Let me know what you think, and we will see you next time. James Bond will return in License to Kill. Cheers.
The first question you ask a producer is, what do you want of me? Do you want me to carry on in the vein that's been set? Or do you want to set off on a new course? The safe, the easy answer is to say, stick with it as it is. In which case, I guess I'd have said no. Roger was brilliant at what he did, but I couldn't simply copy what he'd done. The movies have become somewhat pastiche. Before you go too long, you've become a parody of yourself. You've lost depth, you've lost texture, you've lost contradictions. You start to get shallow. What makes these movies work? What is it that got them going? You've got to go back to the beginning. Here was a hero who murdered in cold blood. The dirtiest, toughest, meanest, nastiest, brutalist hero we'd ever seen. This is what started those movies.
Shocking.
I wanted to bring people back to believing in this character, to bring my reality to it. I guess I've always liked a challenge.